Hello and welcome back to this episode of 8-Bit Unboxing. We're going to unbox all of the things that you guys have sent me during the month of August. This episode will be a little bit shorter than usual, and if you want to know why, stick around to the end because I've got some announcements and some other things to talk about. So let's get started. The first package of the month came from Johnny and Adam Tucker from Oklahoma. And this appears to be a cartridge game for the color computer in the original box. The poor box has seen better days, but it is neat to see how this was originally packaged. And here's the cartridge. Very neat. Thank you. I love collecting cartridge games. Next box is from Lucas Metzger from Washington. And what do we have here? A Sinclair Zx80. These are extremely rare in the United States. And this one appears to be in decent shape. Look how ridiculously thin this thing is. He also sent me a note. You can pause if you want to read it. Thank you very much, Lucas. You'll probably be seeing this again in a future video. Alright, we have a very beat up looking box here. In fact, it's so crunched up it's hard to tell who it's from. I think it's from Roland Seiko. Well, I hope whatever's inside isn't damaged. Okay, it looks like a wireless router, but I'm hoping nobody would have sent me one of those as they aren't very collectible. Yes, it's a bunch of floppy disks. I remember talking to him about this now. I accepted this because many of these disks are the original system disks for the early Macintosh models that used the single density disks. So take a look at this Mac Draw and you'll see that it's an 800K disk that's double-sided, but this one here is only 400K because it's single-sided. These are pretty rare, so thank you, Roland. Next up is a very large box from Tin Lanner. I'm a bit stumped because I remember what he said he was sending me, and I wasn't expecting it to be this big. So let's see what mystery lies in here. Okay, well, that's not what I was expecting at all.
He's dead, Jim.
So let me see if I can get this thing out of here. Okay, I see what it is now. I should have recognized it right away. This is an old Vetrix video game system. Very neat. I've only played one of these once, and it was at the Portland Retro Gaming Convention last year. I guess I'll have to try to repair that. And it looks like he sent a few game cartridges too. Anyway, here's the thing I knew he was sending me. It's a TRS-80 MC10. This is a interesting little brother to the regular color computer. Thank you very much, Tim. Moving on, the next box is from Chris Valentine. Let's see what treasures lie within this box. Looks like several different things. A brand new unopened box of 50 high-density floppy disks. And it looks like some Atari 2600 game cartridges in these bags. Now, I already had Pac-Man, but I decided to take this one too because it's branded for the Sears Telegame system, which was a clone of the 2600. Here's some more Telegame stuff, and a few more games. And in here are some floppy disks. These are original game disks for the Commodore 64. Very nice. Thank you, Chris. The next box is from Christian Blaskowski, and it appears to be Atari stuff. Here's a user's manual for the 1050 floppy drive, and here's a 1050 floppy drive. I already had one of these, but mine doesn't work. I'm hoping this one does. And here's a power supply that is apparently falling apart. Well, at least we can see they aren't full of epoxy like Commodore power supplies. And it looks like he included a bunch of old games on floppy. Very nice, thank you, Christian. We have a rather large box from Eric Wallach. Apparently, it's a box of old computer paper. Hopefully not. Okay, so actually it appears to be an Intellivision. And I said in my last video that I didn't have one, so naturally somebody had to offer me one. Let's see what's in here. Here's the actual game console. It's smaller than I thought it would have been. However, apparently this is the Intellivision 2, not the original, which is fine. These are all the games he sent me. Inside the Frogger box is actually all of the manuals for the various games. I was also stumped on these little things, but then I eventually realized that these slide down into the controllers so that each game can relabel the buttons, which is pretty cool. I'm surprised no other consoles ever did this. Anyway, thank you very much, Eric. Up next, we have a big, heavy box from Brenton Beck. And there's a little note. Well, there's definitely something very large in here. So what we have here is a UMax Super Mac. This is one of the few authorized Mac clones back in the 1990s before Steve Jobs came back and put an end to those licenses. It needs some cleaning and minor case repair, but I think I can have this looking new again. Thank you, Brenton. The next package is from Jim Giannakis, better known as Modern Vintage Gamer. He's the Australian guy I've had on my show several times in the past. Let's see what's in the box. Alright, it's the Super Expander for the Commodore 64. I did an episode on the VIC-20 version of this, and I hope to cover the C64 version eventually. The box has seen better days, but the cartridge itself looks brand new. And it did come with a manual. Okay, thank you, Jim. Next up is a small box from Fedor Stamen from Denmark. And he sent a little note. So apparently this is something for the Coco machines. I think it's an SD card reader. So yeah, I guess this plugs into the cartridge port and you can load games and stuff onto an SD card. That should come in very handy. Thank you, Fedor. Alright, I have a big box that says eBay all over it, but I didn't buy this on eBay. It says a donation from Charles. I actually don't know what this is, as I don't remember any email from him. Okay, I'm almost kind of scared. This doesn't look or feel like computer equipment. Okay, I see what this is. I think I talked with Charles at the convention in New York a few weeks ago, and I remember him saying he was going to send me one of these. However, it appears he sent not one, but two of these Teddy Ruxpins. For those of you who are under 40 years old, these are animatronic toys from the 1980s, and they tell stories and their face moves along with the speech. They operated on standard cassette tapes, but one of the tracks contained digital information to tell it how to move. I look forward to covering these in more detail. Thank you, Charles. Next, I have a box from Joel Hernandez. He wants a shout out to Marfa, Texas. Okay, I'm not sure how many viewers I have in Marfa, but cool. So what we have here is a game for the Magnavox Odyssey 2. Again, I don't have an Odyssey or Odyssey 2, but I like to collect cartridge games. This is really interesting. There's a lot of other stuff in here besides just a cartridge. There's some big fold-out map. Here's a manual. And these appear to be some kind of game pieces, almost like checkers or chess pieces or something. Neat. Thank you, Joel. The next box is from Maxwell Shaw. Looks like some vintage musical gear. A Roland TR-626 drum machine. You know, I suppose this could be handy when I'm reviewing a keyboard that has no built-in drums. It looks like it can connect to external pads, so you could play this as a drum set. And it has MIDI and some sort of memory card socket. Very nice. Thank you, Maxwell. Okay, moving on. Here's a box from Christopher Perry. Okay, this is a special little card that goes into some late 1990s PowerPC Macintosh systems that would allow you to watch TV or even capture video on your Mac. I think some models had this built in from the factory. And here's an Apple remote, but it doesn't look anything like the modern ones. Anyway, thank you, Christopher. Alright, so that actually wraps up all the donations I got in August, and if you want to know why there's less, I'm going to tell you. But first I need to kind of dispel a myth that I've seen posted around in some of the YouTube comments, that of being that I sell all of this stuff on eBay, and that I must be making a killing with all the stuff I'm selling, and that is actually not true. I've never sold anything that has been donated to me. In fact, most people know I have an open door policy here, so I have guests come over all of the time who just, want to see the studio, want to see my museum, and here's some of the pictures of some of the more recent guests I've had come over. And, you could ask any of these people, and they will tell you that, yeah, all the stuff that's been donated to me, it's still here. But one of the other problems these people might tell you about is that I've run out of space. And because I don't sell the stuff and I keep getting more in, there's only so much space. And so even a few months ago, I was turning down about 80 to 85% of the things being offered to me simply because I didn't think they were really relevant to the channel. But now, like this last month, I've turned down probably 99% of the stuff offered to me, and that's pretty much going to be the way it is going forward. I am trying to build some more shelves, which might alleviate some of the problem, but ultimately I'm just not going to be able to take in, and particularly the larger items, I'm just not going to be able to do it. I will mention, though, even though I've never actually sold any of the items that have been donated to me, I have bartered a few of them off. For example, last month I received this really cool Intel 8085 development kit. And I thought it was really cool, but it's something I didn't think that I would probably ever be able to use. But the obsolete geek who lives here in town, he wanted it really bad. And so he offered to trade me for this Laser 128, which is a Apple II clone. And so I went ahead and traded him for it. So even though I didn't sell that item, I did was able to use it for the show, because you are going to be seeing this again in a future episode. So that's about as close to selling anything I've ever gotten. But 99% of the stuff I still have. So if you've offered to donate something to me and I turned it down, well, don't feel like I singled you out. I'm turning down pretty much everybody these days. So, but I got to talk about a little bit more annoying issue. And this is an issue I didn't even want to have to talk about, but I've kind of reached a point where I feel I have to. I've had, over the last few months, about a dozen cases where somebody has contacted me and offered me a donation, and it was something I didn't want. And I always try to be polite with people. So, I told them, well, thank you very much for thinking of me and offering me this, but I don't feel it's something that I can use in my channel, so I'm going to pass on it. And after having that discussion, what do? They send it to me anyway. And pretty much in each one of these cases, it was, for lack of a better word, garbage. Just to give you some examples, one person sent me an old floppy disk with a handwritten label on it, and it wasn't anything even like interesting or important or in any way. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? So I threw it away. Another person sent me an envelope full of old broken RAM modules. I mean, they weren't even vintage RAM modules. They were like from maybe 7 or 8 years ago, so they were worthless, but not vintage or in any way interesting. In fact, I got a whole bucket of them upstairs just waiting to go to recycle because there's nothing I can do with them. They're worthless. And these were crunched up because they weren't even packaged correctly. They put them in a paper envelope. So, I mean, like, even if I wanted to use them, I couldn't because they were destroyed. So another person sent me an old Pentium 4 processor, and all the pins were crunched up on it because they put it in a paper envelope. And again, even if I wanted to use it, which I didn't, it was ruined. So I tossed it in the trash. And so, when people do this to me, especially, when I've already told them I didn't want the item, they put me in a really uncomfortable position. I don't like being a jerk to people, but I feel like that guy in that meme where he's got 2 buttons and he has to pick one button and he doesn't like either choice. And in my case, I get to either be a jerk to a few people or I get to be a jerk to everybody else because nobody wants to see me unboxing garbage on my show. And if I did that, I would probably be inviting more of it to be sent to me. So, I just can't do it. And so I feel really bad that I have to throw that stuff in the garbage. But what else can I do? And so I just wanted to go ahead and mention that right here, right now, that if you send me something that I told you I didn't want, I'm going to throw it in the trash. And I hate that I have to be that way. I don't like doing that. So please, if you offer and I politely decline, then please don't send it to me, because you're not helping me out. I mean, I know some of these people, I think they thought they were helping me out, but they weren't. Okay. So anyway, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I do have one more, at least a little bit more upbeat thing to talk about. I designed some t-shirts quite a while back, and I finally got them in because I had to order them in bulk. So here's one. It's pretty cool. It's a Commodore PET. I've got it in several different colors. Here's another one. It's about floppy disks, and I got this in several different colors. It's pretty cool. Here's my 8-bit keys logo. And this one is actually probably my favorite. And it's a 6502 processor. It says I like chips with dip. And for those who don't get the DIP reference, it stands for dual inline package, which is the layout of this chip, which is not very common anymore. And on the back, it's got a little schematic I drew of the 6502 and its data and address bus, which I think is pretty cool. And so, yeah, I designed these shirts essentially, because I thought they'd be cool. I'm going to wear these around. But I also ordered quite a few because I think other people will like them too. So they are available on my website for what I think is a pretty reasonable price. So go check it out. There's a link in the description field to the website. So that about wraps it up. I got a lot of neat videos coming here in September, so stay tuned for those, and thanks for watching.